Michigan's Adventure is an amusement park located in Muskegon, Michigan. It's owned and operated by Cedar Fair Entertainment, however, it's often been considered the red-headed stepchild of the chain. There is no doubt that since they've been acquired by Cedar Fair, investments have been very minor in comparison to its sister parks. But they still do have a few rides I enjoy, with an incredible headlining roller coaster that I'd take over many Cedar Fair parks' best coaster. Now, I visited Michigan's Adventure for the first time on June 4th, 2023. I was in the park for no more than 2.5 hours and found that to be an adequate amount of time considering crowd levels. I would have planned for more time in the park if our schedule allowed it, but as it turns out, it really wasn't needed. I was able to ride all the park's roller coasters but one, in addition to multiple re-rides on their best coaster. The one roller coaster I did not get to ride here is Woodstock Express, which hadn't yet opened for the season up to that point. The ride is a Chance Rides Big Dipper, which is a kiddie coaster model whose place in the park's lineup is quite necessary in my opinion. I do believe every park should have 1 or 2 roller coasters that cater to young children because these rides can prepare them to experience larger attractions in the future. Though it was closed during my visit, I've placed Woodstock Express here because it just isn't a coaster for me. I find it fairly obvious it would have ranked at the bottom spot, but still a good ride for the kids. The first large-scale roller coaster follows at number 6, and that's Thunderhawk. I'm sure this coaster's placement on the list will be quite subjective, as even though Thunderhawk is the notorious Vekoma SLC model, it's a heck of a lot larger than the following few coasters on this list. If you're a member of the general public and can excuse this ride's horrendous shaking and roughness, you could come off Thunderhead thinking it was the second best coaster in the park. But as a coaster critic, after riding so many Vekoma SLCs around the world, I believe these are some of the most poorly designed coasters ever built. Even worse is a lot of people told me before riding that Thunderhawk was one of the better SLCs in America, but I didn't agree at all. I'd gotten one ride on this coaster and agreed that if I ever came back to Michigan's Adventure, I would not waste my time with this ride ever again. It's rough, painful, unoriginal, and has some of the worst restraints known to mankind, which is why Thunderhawk places very low on my list. Number 5 is Corkscrew. The park's oldest roller coaster, opening in 1979, Corkscrew suffers from a lot of the same issues as Thunderhawk. Though it's uncomfortable, I didn't think it was nearly as bad as Thunderhawk. The ride is also a lot shorter, making the roughness and poor transitions bearable. I at least found the drop to be decently fun, and I think the corkscrews are visually pleasing with a fair bit of hang time offered at their peaks. But otherwise, Corkscrew is still a pretty lackluster attraction. Number 4, Zacks Zoomer. The park's second smallest coaster may be once seen as an experience meant for children, but as a teenage coaster enthusiast, I still find enjoyment in these small-scale wooden coasters scattered around the Cedar Fair chain. Zacks Zoomer in particular is the only one jointly constructed by PTC and CCI rather than the others which are solely PTC coasters. Even though this ride only stands 41 feet tall and travels at pretty low speeds, I actually find it to be relatively aggressive for a coaster of this stature. You won't get any out-of-your-seat airtime or crazy laterals, but it has a little bite to it since it is built from wood. Overall, this is the park's best attraction for kids. It may be a little scary for them initially, but afterwards, I think they might be ready to try something a bit bigger, like the number 3 spot, Mad Mouse. One of 3 Wild Mouse-style roller coasters built by Aerodynamics, Mad Mouse is quite the enjoyable family coaster. It runs with the least amount of trims between the 3 Aerodynamics mice, resulting in some shocking lateral forces and especially airtime pops in the second half. It's also a nice smooth ride, which I appreciate considering how many rough coasters this park has. The one issue I have with this ride is it has absolutely abysmal capacity, so when the line looks like it'll be 10 minutes, no, it's probably closer to 30. Fortunately, I lucked out with crowds during my visit, but I could see how even if it were remotely busy, this could be a brutal ride to get on. Nevertheless, it is a good fun coaster and a great fit in the park's lineup. Number 2, Wolverine Wildcat. A ride that's always seemed to have a horrible reputation in the coaster enthusiast community, many of you may be surprised to see Wildcat all the way up at the number 2 spot. And actually, I didn't even think it was that close. This was by far the number 2 in the park. This thing gets ripped apart a lot because so many view it as a rough ride, and before recently, I'd probably agree and Wolverine Wildcat would be nowhere near 2 on my list. However, Michigan's Adventure has done a lot to improve the ride experience lately. For starters, the first drop is incredibly smooth thanks to GCI Steel Titan Track, which was introduced to the coaster during this past off-season. This I knew about going in, but what surprised me was after the first turnaround was another smooth and enjoyable section of the layout. This time it was Gravity Group's amazing pre-cut track, which has the middle portion of the ride running like a dream. Not only is it comfortable, but it legitimately has some great airtime moments. Unfortunately, after this point the ride starts to die, becoming rougher and lacking in any real forces. But at least here you weren't going fast enough to be getting beat up. I still hope that the park goes back and retracks the final third of the layout, because if they did, you'd have a fantastic wooden roller coaster and one that I probably would have gotten multiple rides on. As it stands, Wolverine Wildcat was a surprisingly fun ride and nowhere near as bad as its reputation suggests anymore. But still, coming in at the number 1 spot by an absolute blowout is Shivering Timbers. This wooden roller coaster built by Custom Coasters International is one of the most brilliantly designed woodies of all time. Because the ride barely turns left or right, there's far less opportunities for it to lose speed throughout the layout, and as a result, it's an incredibly long coaster with so many camelbacks and bunny hills that provide exceptional airtime. It's hard to believe that a roller coaster, which stands only 122 feet tall, is able to travel more than 5,300 feet out and back. but above all else, it's the elements and how they're shaped that really makes this ride amazing. Every single airtime hill feels like it adds to the ride experience, with the few turns and helixes that it does have adding variety with their lateral forces. Shivering Timbers' layout is really such a simple concept, but it was executed to perfection and honestly makes this one of the best wooden coasters in the world. Is it the smoothest? Not necessarily. I actually found Wolverine Wildcat to run a little bit better, but it's far from unbearable, which is a miracle considering it's one of the largest wood coasters on Earth. If Michigan's Adventure were able to smoothen this ride out, maybe with more of that gravity grip pre-cut track, we'd be looking at a 10 out of 10 perfect roller coaster in my opinion. It's funny how even though this is the most neglected park in the Cedar Fair chain, they did end up with a better standout coaster than, ready for this? Every single park in the chain except for Cedar Point, Carowinds, and Kings Dominion. That's it. Granted, I do have California's Great America's Gold Striker, Knott's Berry Farm's Ghost Rider, Kings Island's Orion, and Canada's Wonderland's Leviathan ranked pretty close by, so it really is subjective at that point. But hopefully that gives some context as to how good of a ride this is. Shivering Timbers is the ride at Michigan's Adventure, and I think all of you should put this park on your bucket list solely to experience this attraction. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash for more content like this in the future. Until next time, I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.